Astrology is one of the many ancient practices that guided the way we lived on planet Earth for millennia. But like all things, couldn't astrology benefit from a bit of an update? Well, our guest today has successfully achieved this with something called psychoastrology. She's a licensed therapist, author, podcast host, and an artist, among many other things. This is the story of the Chiron effect with Lisa Tahir. Lisa, great to have you on the show.
It's so wonderful to be here with you, Casper, and our audience. Thank you.
You know, I went through the book. I really didn't know what to expect because I didn't know about Chiron to begin with. I knew about astrology. I'm a Virgo. I knew these tendencies I had through it. I believed in it. But even before we go into the Chiron effect, which I found amazing to learn about as a newbie to that, could you tell us a little bit about your story and what led you into writing this book?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been for over 22 years. And I came to that awareness and love for helping people understand themselves better when I was very young. At the age of 5, my parents found a note I scribbled that said, "I want to be a psychiatrist." And I've always been curious about how the mind works, and knowing that somehow our mind is key to unlocking our lives and the lives that we really want to live versus what we were told, often from a good place. Yeah. Parents wanting to protect us, loved ones wanting to buffer us from disappointment, teachers even trying to guide and direct us. And over the years, as I look back, a part of me always knew there's just something more that I can be and do and have. And it's sent me down really being a seeker of different philosophical, psychological, and spiritual teachings and texts and ways of being. And that all came together in my book, The Chiron Effect, Healing Our Core Wounds Through Astrology, Empathy, and Self-Forgiveness, where I really synthesize those different modalities and traditions, along with taking personal responsibility, because it really starts and ends with us.
Mm-hmm. I love the comprehensiveness of it as well in the book, because you do hit on a lot of things aside from responsibility, vulnerability of everyone, really forgiving yourself. There's a lot in it that's transformative. But before we even jump into all of those pieces, which are very, very important, let's dive into what exactly is Chiron. What is this effect? What are we talking about here? Because most of us know there are 12 signs. But there is something else in astrology within this Chiron that is very important. So tell us why we should care about it.
Absolutely. You know, Casper, Chiron has been written about and spoken about in so many different wisdom traditions. Greek mythology speaks of Chiron as the centaur. He was the founding father of the medical arts, the healing arts, pharmacy, botany. And today, when we go to the doctor and there is the staff of medicine with the 2 snakes woven together, that is the staff of Asclepius that Chiron the centaur gave to him as his teacher. So we see Chiron referenced literally everywhere in medicine, not knowing. And besides in Greek mythology, Carl Jung wrote about Chiron as the wounded healer archetype in our collective unconscious. Sigmund Freud, who coined the repetition compulsion in 1914, which speaks to we're hardwired to heal. We're hardwired as the body starts to repair itself. When you have a cut, a broken bone, so does our mind. And this repetition compulsion speaks to, we cycle through patterns of relationships, of our routine, as we call it. And I see us as little mini solar systems, Casper. We orbit and frequent people, places, and things. We're our own little planet. Others orbit and frequent us. And that comes from Chiron in the solar system. Chiron in astronomy was discovered around 1974. And it's a minor planet and comet that's between Saturn and Uranus. It was the first of the Centaur class, again, referencing Chiron the Centaur in astronomy. And it speaks to an area of vulnerability in astrology. Chiron speaks to where we feel vulnerable and we tend to hide or edit that about ourselves. We tend to minimize, say that we might be really successful outwardly, but internally we feel like we're never good enough. And we're constantly working and achieving, receiving awards, financial gain, but you never feel good enough. And we see this a lot when successful people kill themselves, that they never somehow would let in their success. And this is what Chiron really nails, this area of vulnerability up to and including core wounding, things like sexual abuse and trauma that leave us really disconnected, our minds and bodies. And it took almost 4 years for me to really synthesize all this that I'm speaking to, like what Chiron really is about. And I know even for myself, the astrological piece was kind of like, astrology, what's up with that? And when I delved more into astrology, understanding it to be a symbolic language, and we wrote our own astrology. I'm a really big believer, and we wrote the lives that we are living in a realm. I see timelines as happening simultaneously versus past, present, and future lives. It's just in our human body, we can't conceive that. We're so linear. And I see you nodding your head, yet really there are realms where everything is happening simultaneously. And our astrology is what we wrote as the lessons and the things we wanted to learn in order to be whole, in order to give, to be our best selves, and understanding your core wounding, understanding where you feel vulnerable and healing that instead of hiding from it is a key to really being your happiest self. And, really losing that competitiveness, comparing ourselves to others, and really learning to love exactly who we are. And I'm going to pause to check in with you and see how does this sound and feel to you?
Oh, no, I love it. In medicine, a lot of what we do, a lot of what all practitioners in medicine do is try and figure out those whys that a lot of people have is, why is this happening to me? I do this, I do that, right? And then you got to peel back layers of onions to find out why and get to the core. And a lot of times those are the wounds. But in life in general, a lot of people have these questions. Why is this happening to me? Why is this, unfolding to me? And a lot of times it stems in the unconscious, which is sort of, where Chiron also places. I love this quote in the book that you referenced from, and you spoke about just before, Carl Jung, in that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Yes. And so many of us go on with this idea that it's just fate that I suffer, that I, go through this. But do you feel that most of us have that hidden narrative, and that's what causes a lot of pain, suffering, and disease in the world?
I do. And as you were saying that, Casper, I'm thinking part of being human, part of being on our planet Earth is that there is suffering. It's so easy to look and see that everywhere. And where my book, I really wanted to help people is to understand that though we experience suffering, I certainly have, it's about what we do with it, that we have consciousness, which is awareness as human beings. And we get to decide what to make of, making meaning, as Viktor Frankl spoke about. We have the ability to make meaning of our suffering versus other living beings that don't have that kind of consciousness. And so whatever has happened to you, though it certainly wasn't your fault, especially in areas of childhood sexual abuse, trauma, domestic violence, those types of things, we have the ability to make meaning and use it to even better and help end suffering, to heal ourselves and help others. And I think that's what's so beautiful about living, is that we have that choice to step into the role of healer first for ourselves. And forgiveness is such a big part of that. As I write about forgiveness, I think is often spoken about as something we do for others, but it's really first and foremost what we give ourselves, what we need to give ourselves to be forgiving of others, that really being less hard and judgmental and critical with ourselves, thinking that's how we grow and get better. It's not. It might temporarily help you gain some strides, but in the end, you're left feeling depleted and unhappy. Whereas really doing the deep forgiveness work of understanding at that moment in time in my life and my development, that's the best I knew to do, for example, and I can learn more. We can always expand our awareness, our consciousness, and show up differently in our lives and for ourselves. And I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, I feel that forgiveness is often something not discussed in the healing arts enough. I think a lot of what happens in, let's say, medicine, not the healing arts, I think they're two different things in some ways, is that there isn't much of a responsibility in medicine. Take the pill, do the surgery, continue with your life and continue. And, you'll get better. We'll give you another pill when other things come up and so on and so forth. Whereas you talked a lot about personal responsibility in this. You talked about doing the work yourself to uncover the traumas, the core wounds, as you say. And I do think that forgiveness has to lie within that. And I want to hear more about forgiveness as it relates to Chiron and psychoastrology, but let's set the tone first with understanding this trademark thing you have in psychoastrology. What is psychoastrology as compared to astrology itself?
Sure. For me, psychoastrology was a term that I created to simply demarcate where our personal astrology intersects our psychology. And it's kind of fun. I love words. My favorite book is the dictionary. I just think words are so fun to play with. And to me, it just seemed just really cool psychoastrology to help understand this intersection between our unconscious, as you referenced, Casper, and our conscious minds, and that we can have deeper awareness. I use meditation as a tool to raise my awareness. I spend a lot of time in meditation. I find it to be the number one tool to really help harmonize ourselves with the solution. And it's different than how I was taught. It's different than I think a lot of how the world operates outwardly, is like you go out and you achieve and you just grit it out and you do it, and success may or may not come. And that's certainly one way people can live that way. I found it to be being a person with Chiron and Aries, which speaks to a core wounding and my sense of value and worth. I was one of those individuals with lots of personal success, lots of awards, lots of public recognition for my accomplishments, establishing a nonprofit, receiving a U.S. patent for an invention to help people with disabilities blow glass from their wheelchairs. And yet, Casper, I never felt good enough. And it was like really messing me up in my head. Like, when am I what do I have to achieve to finally feel like I'm good enough? And it was really depleting. And I feel like I'm talking to a lot of you that are in that pattern. It's a thought pattern of believing that it's what we do is what makes us feel good enough or better. But I realized it's who I am, that if I never accomplished another thing, I am good enough. And when I learned that Chiron in the sign of Aries speaks to this vulnerability in my self-esteem and learning to value myself separately from accomplishment, separately from what I do, and more of what brings me peace. I love being in nature. I love being in the ocean, spending more time there, and really letting my mind stop overworking and letting my body experience nature, the joy that it brings me. And I started to heal this part of myself that felt like she needed to accomplish endlessly to be valued by others even. And that love is a bunch of work, that I can release that pattern. And I replaced it with a stronger inner knowing of my value and worth, and just getting comfortable with allowing life to come to me. So that's kind of an example of this, what my book will help you understand based on where Chiron is in one of the 12 signs. It speaks to, like, Chiron in Taurus is about wounding by neglect. And this could have been neglect. You might have been sexually abused. Your caretaker might have had an addiction that kept them from tending to your emotional or physical needs. And you might be neglecting yourself even, and caring for yourself. So it can be so valuable to learn what this area is so that you can really focus your attention there instead of feeling like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. One of the things I picked up in the book is that you were being vulnerable within it. You spoke in that little segment about not having your shit together for a while.
Right.
And I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people, when they write a book, they need to be an expert on it and show that they are almost perfect in some ways about writing this book. Otherwise, why would you read a book by someone who's not all there? It's almost like you're taking advice from someone who's, has flaws, but we all do. You said we're not perfect. We all have to, I think, approach things without that level of perfection. And again, go back to that idea of forgiveness. But so many of us in today's society deal with grief, deal with guilt, deal with fear, right? It's through this pandemic, and I think through these times, those have been uplifted. Mm-hmm. How can this book and understanding Chiron help those people that are in that state of fear and just guilt, shame, lower conscious levels? What would you tell them? Why should they read about it and learn about Chiron and their placement within their astrology sign?
It's really important to free yourself from those mental chains and bondage, which to me is really sourced in fear. Mm-hmm. And when we're fearful, our problem solving skills are interrupted in our actual brains because we're in fight, flight, or freeze, and we're really disconnected from the solution, which is what we actually are asking for and reaching for. And so it's important to really go easy and be gentle with yourself and just acknowledge where you are, that I'm feeling afraid. And it's actually okay, because you don't want to start doing a bunch of things until you have some more peace about it. And again, that's really listening to the wisdom of your body. When we're in fear, it's an indicator to pause, and that we also need some more information to help us bridge that gap between where we are and where we want to go. And in my book, I gently walk you through that process. I ask you to get a journal, to spend maybe 20 minutes a day or session reading, light a candle, and I walk you through some questions like thinking back to your own upbringing, times in your life when you felt really loved. What was going on there? Who was there? When you felt loved, when you felt seen and heard. And then conversely, what about some times where you didn't feel loved, where it was actually really hard for you? Who was there? And if no one was there, what beliefs did you start to make about yourself? Like, I'm unimportant. I'm not worth enough for my parent or caretaker to be here with me. And that's where we start really making these core beliefs, Casper, is in these moments in our upbringing where somebody, say, wasn't there and we're left alone to try to source meaning when we're not able to at our younger ages. Our brain isn't even developed enough to see the bigger picture. And it's about kind of stepping back to your younger self, holding your hand and kind of reparenting yourself in a way through the work in my book, so that you learn the skills of self-talk. I talk about triggers being unhealed energetic attachments, like kind of landmines that are invisible that someone else might step on, and we have a reaction, usually triggered to feel not good enough, to feel some kind of lack, something that was like so painful that we never want to feel it again. And we kind of cut off from that part of ourselves and become angry and defensive, versus that's exactly the place within us we need to forgive and love and transform. And so that's some of the things that you'll find in my book.
You work with a lot of people. I'm curious, do you find the majority of them have unresolved emotional trauma from childhood that they don't even think is problematic, but is truly a cause of why they're going through some suffering and health issues?
You know, Casper, I think most people do know that things they went through when they were younger, something wasn't right. I think most people certainly are aware and conscious, and it's kind of relieving to just grow up as myself, like, oh my gosh, like put that behind me. You know, things were rough or whatever, but you just move on, you just move forward, thinking that being older will help heal things. And I talk in my book, it's not time passing alone that heals us. It's what we do with that time that actually heals us. So I think most people aren't sure, and they're confused or kind of like, what's going on when they enter into romantic relationships that somehow feel frustrating in a similar way to all the relationships they've been in. Like somebody seems really awesome, and it's like, oh my gosh, like we're here again. And that really speaks to that core wounding and vulnerability where we're trying to heal by recreating circumstances that are familiar, but we need the tools to actually change those patterns. And that's what my book offers you is our tools to change our thought patterns, which create new beliefs. A belief is simply a thought we think repetitively and we pair with emotion. And that becomes the actions we take, our behaviors. That dictates our orbit that I was speaking about, the people, places, and things we habituate. And to really go higher and beyond where we are in the ways we want to, we have to adopt new thoughts, create new beliefs, and start to show up differently.
Right. Now, let's give a real world example of this. In my case, let's say I looked at the chart. So if you had the book, you'd be able to see the chart when you were born. It's a larger segment because it is a comet. So it's not like month, it's years, basically, that give you that. I was born in September of 81. So mine is in Taurus. My Chiron is in Taurus, which is neglect, as you said. So now that I know this, okay, my core wounding is neglect and everything. I have that awareness. Without reading the book too much or giving some insight of what the book will give me. What do I take out of that? What are the takeaways and actions I could use to work on that?
And it's, I like how you're saying work on that, because I think, again, that's what we're taught, Casper. We need to work on this. And it's more of like, who, do I need to become to love myself more in this way? How do I become really mindful of not neglecting myself? And for this Chiron in Taurus, it has to do to a connection with your physical body, to really be aware of having a loving connection to your own body, not being harsh about your physical appearance, not being judgmental there. And if there were ways that you were neglected emotionally, physically growing up, how to really be mindful of your emotional needs so that you're not neglecting them also, or connecting with people that tend to overlook your emotional needs as well. Does that resonate at all with you?
Sure. I mean, I think it resonates with a lot of people, but yeah, I mean, I'm the toughest critic of myself for sure, by far. I'm a harsh critic on myself. It comes out. So I think there is some of that. Looking back, I had a very good upbringing, but at the same time had a father that was very busy in the medical fields, came from Poland with nothing, right?
Yes.
This is why I didn't get into medicine, by the way, because I was growing up and I was like, well, my dad was there T-ball. He's working long hours at the, there must have been some feeling of neglect. I know that he was doing it because he wanted to help the family. Of
course.
But of course, as a child, you take it that way, right? And I think that's a big thing to clarify as well. The trauma as a child doesn't need to be a very, very serious type of trauma. Of course, some are sexual abuse and all these other things you could say that are truly traumatic. But as a child, you can take something as a trauma. I could take my father working long hours as traumatic to me because he wasn't at game when other fathers were there. And that could become an underlying belief that I'm not good enough, I'm neglected by, right? Isn't that part of that as well?
You're hitting it on the head. Yes. And exactly, like, why isn't he here? And the beliefs that you created about yourself and your value and worth, Casper, at that young age is what's really important to look at. And do I want to keep believing this? Again, with the awareness and consciousness you have today around your father and who he is, but not glossing over how that affected you either. It's a balance of like you as a young boy and, your dad's out and here you are. And what was that like for him not to be there? And just really be honest and aware that could have hurt your feelings. That could have been really hard. You could have felt self-conscious because other kids had their dads there, and even buffering, like, how did you handle that? Was that at all part of it? Seeing other kids' dad's there and yours isn't, and what does that mean about me?
Right.
And exploring that.
And that's the thing. It sounds a lot like once you have this awareness, because the awareness itself, it's part of the book, you have it, you read about it, whether it's neglect or something else out there that's your core wound, then you need to sit with it and kind of be introspective, right? Ask yourself those questions. Do you feel that part of it also is being able to answer it with an intuitive mind, not mind, I should say, because sometimes our mind gets in the way, I think, of intuition. But do you feel that people who are lacking intuition can do that? I speak with so many people that sit down with themselves. I just can't get anything, Casper. I ask what's the best answer. I just can't pull up anything. I say, sit with yourself longer. Don't push yourself. Don't let this go. Maybe meditate, write a little journal. Is that part of the key? And is that part of the problem too? That so many of us have lost our intuition, seek validation outside, seek answers from others, as opposed to going introspective inside.
I like how you're saying that. And the truth is that we aren't taught to listen to our intuition. We all have it. You have it, listening. It's just a matter of how to reconnect with that inner knowing of people, places, and things. And that wisdom is found in your body. And think about when you're walking down the street, when you start to tune into this, it's so powerful. There's certain people that you'll feel kind of like magnetized to, like, oh, I'm just curious about them, or what are they about? And there are others you literally might walk more around or away. That's intuition, really leading us to and away from what's meant for us. And it's about honoring that. It's taught from the youngest ages. Think about being a child on the playground, and kids are so really in their intuition naturally because they haven't been taught out of it, so to speak. And that say if children, they might not want to play with someone. And I know for myself, oh my gosh, Lisa, go play with little Jenny. Like, she's a nice girl. Like, but kids might know there's not that child is bad or anyone's bad. You know, we have a resonance, we have a frequency that matches with other people and kind of repels others, just like a magnet. Magnets on one end connect and glue together. On the other end, they repel. And we are just like that. And it's about learning and listening to who am I attracted to? And that doesn't just mean sexually. It means intellectually. Who am I drawn to? And who might I feel neutral about? And who might I feel like, oh, like kind of repelled by? And so that's how we find the answers. What answers do I feel really excited about? What opportunities is like a hell yes versus a maybe, or I should do this. And it's discernment that our intuition often speaks to us through. And it does take some trust. It takes some time to be patient and often not talking so much to others, because everyone has an opinion and the only opinion that matters is your own. And when you're confused about that, you know, that's when you might want to get some personal development and some help to develop your own connection with the answers versus outsourcing that to others. Part of how we lose our intuition is because we outsource our power to others to determine for us. And it's about taking that back and, you know, really learning to hear your own desires and voice for that path to unfold for you.
It's really difficult to do in this day and age of social media, I think, to really build that intuition, because we seek answers everywhere else within influencers. It's the whole thing about influence. They influence your decision.
Right.
They actually, that's why they're called influencer. Let's be honest. And the thing I've realized over the years is that to cultivate my intuition, it's a lot of getting back to nature. Sometimes it's fasting and avoiding things like alcohol and other things, right? Yeah. It's less social media, less phone and technology in general. And it's also meditation. And I know you're big on meditation. Can you go into your meditation regimen, maybe what type of meditation you enjoy?
Sure. And I want to speak to what you just said, Casper, about influencers, because we're all influencers. You listening, you're an influencer. And it's not about the number of followers you have on social media. It's about the people in your life that live in your home, that are at your place of employment, at the grocery and bank that you frequent. You influence those around you. And it's time that we recognize that some more within ourselves. You don't have to have a certain social media following to be an influencer. That's a different type of influencer. And to really take seriously the impact that you have upon those around you and decide how you want that to be, what legacy you want to leave when you leave a conversation, not just when you leave your life and your physical body in transition, but it's like, how do you want to leave others feeling after they have dinner with you, after they're on the phone with you? It's like these little mini legacies. And when you start looking at that, it can be really powerful, you know, and it could feel overwhelming at first, but just try to feel into the kind of influence you want to be on those around you, and then start showing up as that person.
Yeah. Incredibly important, to really tap into that person that you want to be rather than the person you're told to be. I think a lot of people are thinking, that they have to be what they're told. Do not. That's beauty in the authentic self, being truly unique and really, tapping into your heart of who you are. Before we got started with this, we talked about us both being podcasters, you having a lot more years than me in podcasting, and how that's transformative. And in a lot of podcasts, I heard that. I love hearing about also authors who write books, how that book transformed them in writing it, and kind of the process. For some, it's incredibly easy to write the book. For some, it's years and years in the making, everything else. What was the process like to write Chiron Effect for you?
Sure. And Casper, I meant to say this earlier to you, that you being a podcaster is one of the things that has helped you to heal this Chiron wound of neglect. Because as you engage with guests and do some solo shows like that 100 episode anniversary I was listening to last night, it's like you're not neglecting yourself or your voice. So without knowing, you've been healing that Chiron vulnerability. So just to have awareness can help you feel better about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And Lisa, let me just jump in and say that it was such a fear of mine to go on and be a podcast. It really was. It was not easy. Like people are like, oh, you're great, this and that. I'm a huge introvert. I get nervous on camera, like all these things. I don't even listen to my own voice. So I don't listen to the podcast, like all these things, but I had to face them. And by going through them, each time I do it, I think, tap into that core wound a little bit and heal it a little bit more.
You do. And you have a great voice. I noticed that last night when I listened to you for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, I love his voice. It's so soothing. So just know that. I appreciate
it. Most people don't like their own voice because it doesn't sound like what they hear, right? When you hear from the outside. So, but thank you.
You're welcome. And writing my book, it was immensely transformative because I had to step into someone I was becoming and wasn't yet. I wanted to be a published author. But when you're writing a book, if it's your first book, you haven't done that yet. So it takes a lot of faith and trust that this is going to work out. And there was so many steps I didn't even know about, since I wanted to go the traditional publishing route with a publisher versus self-publishing, having a literary agent, writing a manuscript and a book proposal, and then having publishers reject it so many times, sometimes with really scathing remarks about my work. Sometimes I would cry, and I easily could have stopped because it was really tough emotionally to hear some of the criticism and feedback. And yet each time I would take my time out to literally cry and be like, okay, Lisa, let's print out this email. There's one in particular from one publisher. A lot of them were kind and just, no, this doesn't resonate with us. But one in particular was very, very specific about things they disliked about my manuscript. And I printed it out, and they actually had some good feedback that I was able to incorporate in the final draft that I did get a publishing deal. And it was awesome with Inner Traditions, a wonderful publisher. And it really helped heal my to put myself out there and believe in myself. Like I knew I had a book that was so important to be read that nothing was going to stop me. And I was like, this book is going to manifest. Like I'm committed to the 3.5-year process. And when I even thought about endorsements, because that was something I took really seriously, I wanted really beautiful endorsements. And I started that process a year or so before my manuscript was even finished. And when I thought, who in the world would I love to endorse my book? The Dalai Lama came to mind. And I started laughing. I was like, okay, Lisa, the Dalai Lama, you want the Dalai Lama to endorse your book. And I almost dismissed myself. And I was like, you know what? Who do I have to become for His Holiness to endorse my book? And I sought out through meditation, which for me, you asked, is setting a phone on my alarm. Some mornings it might be 5 or 10 minutes, and having it on silent and just closing my eyes. And I imagine breathing through my heart. So in my body, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, to really just feel into my heart space. And I start to feel really soothed when I'm there. And it took about 2 years, Casper, I'm not exaggerating. I thought about His Holiness, what does that mean to me, really? And I thought about his holiness to me is about compassion. Like when you hear him do Facebook Lives or read any of his teachings, it's really about being compassionate to fellow humans and yourself and animals and just in general. And I was like, okay, how do I need to be more compassionate? And I started to notice that when my internet goes down, I might be really short with the representative helping me and not that kind of a person. And I heard, you got to clean that up. And then say at the grocery, instead of being on my phone while checking out, you say, hey, how's your day? Like being more present. And it took for me like almost a 2-year process until one day I sat in meditation, Casper, and I saw his holiness there. And he said, I want to read your book. Send it to me. And I emailed my manuscript. And in less than 3 weeks, I got the most beautiful letter from his holiness of endorsement. And I got it along with a New York Times bestseller and other really progressive thinkers on our planet alive today. And it was like, wow, it really works when you start to, take the steps to become that person you most want to be. It makes me emotional. Like it really all comes together for you. And I want people to know that.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible story and the power of manifestation, right? I don't think we realize how much power we have. I talk a lot about self-healing. We have that power. Like you said, you get a paper cut, you don't even need to. Your body's an amazing self-healing organism. It will heal you without you even thinking about it. But it's also an amazing self-manifesting organism, being, you could say. And this idea, The Secret and so many others were out there. Do you feel that those probably didn't go, get as accepted maybe or as validated because so many people wanted, all right, I want $1 million, I want $1 million, it's not happening. Do you think if they looked into their Chiron and looked into their core wounds, changed their belief systems, were more in tune what they really want? They don't want $1 million. That's not what, that's the ego in a sense. That's
they
something
want
else.
Freedom, and the $1 million would bring freedom. So I think you could have your $1 million. It's about who you become on the path to your $1 million and really listening to. And part of that is understanding where your vulnerabilities are that Chiron illuminates so that you can heal that part of yourself to feel worthy to receive the $1 million that will bring the freedom you truly seek. That a lot of times we want things, but we also simultaneously don't quite believe that we can have them. So that's the real healing process. That's what The Secret is about, truly. It's about aligning our desires with our beliefs. And that's the journey. Like that can take, a day or years, depending on what there is for you to heal within yourself and to really be focused on the path, on who I'm becoming on my way to this $1 million. And like, trying to let it be as joyful as it can be versus so focused on the end, then how you're feeling along the path.
It's funny. So many people put the destination as the most important thing when it's the journey to get there. That's much more important.
And I think it's like eyes on both places, Casper, almost like you're looking at that destination and also where you are as I hear you saying that. It's like both, awareness of both.
Yeah. And it's funny because I often, if you were given, you have this question, if you were given a superpower, what would it be? And many people go with teleportation. And I always found that as like the shortcut that will not make you appreciate getting somewhere, right? If for me, it'd be like, it would be flying to get there. And it's still a struggle to get there because then you appreciate so much more when you get there. You still get to the same place, but you're going to appreciate, and the journey is not an easy one. But don't you feel in this world right now where everything is self-gratification, instant dopamine release, give me now $1 billion, not $1 million, all this, and I want it within a year and I want it, with no challenges. Is that part of the problem that we have sort of gone against? I want no challenges, but I want it all.
Right. You know what I think, and this might be a little radical, I think it's okay to say that. But again, when you say that, I want $1 billion, I want it easy, I say that. And yet the real legwork, so to speak, is like, okay, who do I have to become? And there's always, this is an inner journey that will inspire you to take outer steps. And so it's about really who, and even how you can do that now. Having $1 billion, what would I do with that? And start to even Google, like, what would I do with my $1 billion that I have? And start to like, that's how you start to kind of play with the process and the energy and really see. And that will lead you to maybe there's something I can do now, while that's on its way to manifesting, that there's always ways to live a part of our dream without the full end manifestation here. And that's really what I think lights up our journey and makes it fun is like, what can I do now? Like being really satisfied with where I am and eager for more. And what can I do now with where I am? Because if you stay in the discontentment of not having the $1 billion, you're not going to get there. It's about really transforming our discontentment into like authentic peace and joy and gratitude, appreciation.
But then we have to truly address and heal our core wounds. Otherwise, we will always be somewhat within us limiting that idea that we have. Even though there is maybe excitement at the $1 billion, you start doing the research. If you're not addressing something that is a core wound or a limiting belief or an unconscious belief.
A limiting belief, healing your core wound is really healing your limiting beliefs that you made about yourself when those painful things happened in your life, or those, it might be a big trauma with a capital T or smaller hurts. For some of you listening, it's like an ouch. There might not be those full blown traumas, and that's a good thing. It might be just an area of vulnerability where it's like an ouch, and even healing that to be who you truly want to be here on earth during this life experience that you have. And I think looking at how you can use what you've been through to help others and yourself, there can be some real happiness there, like real deep meaning and fulfillment. Start a podcast, like Absolutely. You have, Casper, like I have. Like, how do you want to, like, there's so many ways to like be happy on our way to.
So many ways, but also there's a lot of people that are sick out there that truly have chronic illness, complex chronic illness. They're barely getting out of bed. I mean, we see it so much at our clinic, and it's young people too now, and really struggling. For those people, would you still have them go through and seek out those things to improve on themselves from, limiting beliefs? Would they start there, or should they start maybe with medical treatment and a holistic type of approach? Can they be done at the same time?
Definitely at the same time, and absolutely address your health needs through medicine and alternative methods to really, again, listen to your intuition and your body, because your body wants to be feeling better. Your body wants to heal and to be stronger and healthier, and to kind of listen to your own inner self about what that path is and what brings you joy, how you can experience more joy in your life, because that helps the cells of the body to start to heal, and to definitely honor your body and its needs, and by maybe not pushing until that really is indicated, to really lovingly speak to your body and its cells. And meditation is a big tool to, ask your body to really align with this healing, with this feeling better, and on a daily basis to be gentle and easy towards your body and its current functioning.
Tell us about the sessions you do that you offer to people that heal emotional wounds and help people live happy and healthy lives.
Sure, Casper. I love being a therapist. It's like my favorite thing. I love really helping you, starting with right where you are. What is most important for you to now? What got you to email, to text, to call, to set up a session or a potential session? Because I like to capture what in the moment is activated, because that gives a lot of information of where we need to go, what we need to explore, versus starting with like a narrative history of your life. I think it's about where you're at now, and then pulling the pieces progressively of, well, how did this come to be for yourself? Like, where do you want to go? And developing, I start to see a map. I'm really visual in my imagination, and I get like a picture of a map of where you are and where you want to go and where you've been, and collaboratively really working together to get you there.
It sounds amazing. And I feel like so many people could benefit from that. And you do that remotely, correct?
I do. I do Zoom and FaceTime and phone sessions. And Casper, I'd love to offer your audience 50% off a first time individual session, or I do like a monthly unlimited, as many, so whenever you need it, text or call. And as soon as I'm available, I'll get back to you. So half off either of those for a first time client.
Thank you so much. And
yeah,
we
you're
will be
welcome.
sharing that offer as well, on the podcast page and through our emails. So that's amazing. Where can people learn more about you, read the book?
Sure. The best is, you can Google Lisa Tahir, Tahir. My website is nolatherapy.com. It stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy.com. That's also my link tree, Nola Therapy. And Casper, you brought up social media earlier, and I would be saying, oh, come connect with me on Instagram and Facebook. But one of the things I've asked for this year is more happiness and peace. And interestingly, my 6 social media accounts were hacked and disabled. And so, no,
the universe sent you a sign, huh?
But you know what? I've been so much happier without having those outlets right now. And I know I'm going to recover them. But in this month kind of interim, it's been like a real stepping into some present moment awareness of just being in my life and appreciating, wanting to come back to social media at that right time with some more intentionality versus feeling like I have to do this to be successful, that I think we're taught. You don't. We attract success because of who we are. It's not like in the social media, it's in ourselves. And so it's been an interesting experience for me to go without those social media outlets and still be successful and happy and connected to people. And I just throw that out there because just to give you things to think about.
Oh, absolutely. Digital detoxes are necessary. And I think understanding we don't live in a digital world, we live in a real world, we could be incredibly happy without those things as well. Whereas I feel like a lot of people have now become somewhat addicted and put a lot of their happiness within social media, which is never a good thing. Now, I know you're wearing the Saints shirt there.
Yes, New Orleans Saints.
So I guess you're not a LA Rams fan but.
Well, when the LA Rams are playing someone besides the Saints, I'm an LA fan. I'm an LA Rams fan.
Really quickly, what is that like to split time between two places like that? I think it's becoming more and more common. I'm thinking about doing that and becoming more of a snowbird and leaving New York, Florida, doing both.
I love that.
How has that impacted you being in two places, not having, let's say, a singular place that you are always there, but actually splitting your time between two cities?
Casper, I love it. And I encourage you to do it. I get to live in my 2 favorite cities, New Orleans and Los Angeles, and each offers such unique energy. And all the people I've met, my life is so much better because I've met new people here in LA, having been from New Orleans. And then I go to New Orleans and I feel like I appreciate my people and places and things so much more, not being there all the time. And it's been like wonderfully expansive for me to be on this journey.
Well, you sold me. I'm going to go through it.
Yes, do it. And let me know.
I will. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. I know you have a client coming up soon, so I want to be respectful of your time, but I hope everyone could check it out. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom.
You're awesome, Casper. Thank you. It's my honor and pleasure.
Yeah. And as you heard Lisa today, we all have patterns that seem to guide the course of our lives with or without our consent. As we begin to uncover the mysterious influences of astrology, we can find ways to break free from our habits and patterns, work to end our self-sabotage, and allow our lives to unfold in limitless new ways. So until next time, keep writing your own healing and limitless story.